Welcome to Midlife Women Entrepreneurs, where you'll find real stories, practical strategies, and the mindset shifts you need for entrepreneurship. If you've ever felt like midlife was too late to launch a business, write a book, or chase a dream, think again. I'm Lynette Turner, your host, and I'm bringing you inspiring conversations and practical tips to help nudge you forward and keep growing in midlife. So let's jump in. I have Christiane Witt from SoulXAI with me today. Christiane, welcome to the podcast. In all full transparency, this is the second time we are recording. Yes. Because your business went through a rebrand. And as I saw the rebrand, I thought, we better re-record. So we are re-recording today, which I am super excited to hear more about your rebrand and all about your business direction. Before we get started, though, I'm going to hand the floor over to you. You give yourself a bit of an introduction and a little bit of what you're up to.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Lynette. And super nice to do this a second time around. And I think we'll have a really great conversation around what is happening with AI and why rebranding and flexibility in business is going to be more and more essential. So this all fits together, right? We can make lemonade out of lemon. So
exactly.
I am one of 3 founders of Soul Soothing Business, and this is our brand, Soul Times AI. And I've been in this for over 20 years. I think last time we talked, I started the online business in 2004 as a life coach. It seems like a really long time. Here we are now on Riverside and recording. But what I've really in the recent years noticed was that we were using AI quite a bit to facilitate our human processing. And so rather than just use this internally, that's the rebrand, we decided we're going to help entrepreneurs incorporate AI in a way that it's actually meant and was designed. The vast majority of people today use it the wrong way. They replace their own intelligence rather than elevate the intelligence. Hence, this Soul Times AI popped up. We want to elevate the human with the help of AI. And we primarily work with entrepreneurs that have 3 different issues. The top one, and you might relate to this, I got this genius brain. It's finding new solutions. I'm picking dots left and right, putting them together into new formation, but I have no idea what my secret sauce is. So in this case, I work with them on pulling that out and then putting it into, and we'll talk a little bit more about this. Currently, we use Claude. The Claude has a project and we load it in there so that his or her entire team can access that intelligence. That's step 1. The same solution can also go maybe more for women that work with you that have everything in their brain, but it's in the brain, right? And it's starting to feel really heavy, and they get asked by their growing team about, how about this? Should we do this, etc. We unload everything that's in the brain, capture it, put it again in the Claude project, tell Claude how to interact with the team. We create team accounts for the client. And again, the team can access the information and the owner gets freedom. And then the last one really is more for startups that are wanting to work collaboratively, where there's much more of a flat organization than it used to be. They put everything right into the project so that everybody right from the beginning, and this is very similar to myself and my 2 partners, that we have the same access to the same intelligence and then work collaboratively to build the business. So it is all about really celebrating or human intelligence, and then have it be supported in an organized, strategic way by AI.
I love that. And Christiane, when you first said we're not using it properly, we're using it to replace our own intelligence. And I thought, what a great example of that, because I've seen it actually happen where in my programs, I get them to do the work first, and then I give them an AI prompt to amplify that work. And they'll always jump to the prompt. And so when we circle back on a weekly basis to check the homework kind of thing, it's, well, what did you even write? And they don't know because so I think that's really interesting.
Process it the same way. Right.
Exactly. So let's break that down a little bit. So I'm going to use ChatGPT in my business, or Claude. How would you recommend that I use it versus how the average person is using it?
Yeah. So this is a good conversation, right? Because you're using it, I'm using it. think about why and how it was built. And when we're actually talking about AI, we're currently just talking about large language models, right? We're not talking about agentic work or any of this robotic work. We're just using the chat tools, right? And they were built on algorithm and pattern recognition. That's all they do. Data, algorithm, pattern recognition. But our brain doesn't do that. We aren't that great at pattern recognition, but we are really great at putting these seemingly unrelated dots together and create something novel. That's creativity, right? We have original thought. You ever notice how the LLM never fights with you, right? You say, but that's not a good idea. You're right. That's not a good idea, right? We are more of a general processor. We take emotions into account, experiences, wounds, feelings, and we put this together and we create something from that. The tool cannot do that. It doesn't have experience. It doesn't have the memory from what happened to me 20 years ago and how it formed me to be the person of today. So, for example, if I want to create alchemy with my childhood wounds, that's my job. I cannot give that to the tool. It doesn't have any childhood wounds, right? So, for example, if I work with somebody or even you yourself, you have these scattered thoughts and you think, how does this all fit together to build a new brand or a new offer? This inclination, right? You go, I saw this and then I drove by there yesterday and that was cool. And it's all these separate dots. You're going to have to put them together first by yourself. And then you can use the tool to say, okay, I have this inkling, this and this and this. Can you research what 5 million other people have done, with that? So you can use it to enforce or to make sense out of your disorganized thoughts. But it does not replace problem solving, creativity, original thought, new solutions. That's us.
Yeah. And you're saying stuff that just reminded me of this. On my walk to the gym every morning, I always listen to some kind of podcast, and the podcast is around what is the difference between intuition and gut. And that's what she was basically saying, is that intuition is all this data that you're collecting. And then the gut is the thing that takes it and gives it the outcome. And I kind of applied it to what you were saying, where you're saying that we have all the answers. We have all the information in us. And what you're saying is use these AI tools in a way that will bring it all together and maybe act like a quasi gut to give you the outcomes or at least options for those outcomes.
Yeah. So to give you a really good example, I'm working with somebody who is really genius mind. And I really tried to think, okay, I've helped a lot of people. We have another brand. We help horse professionals. They have to put a framework together and it's a very intuitive profession. So I pull it all out of them and then they create a framework that sells better. So I was thinking, okay, I have all these ideas. And then something came as thought, this is like the hero's journey. You're familiar with that, right? And we go on a journey and then we come up transformed. Somebody who has a mind like this has gone through lots of successful heroes' journeys. And they get to a point where, just like our horse people, it's unconscious competency. It's mastery. So what's if I take my clients backwards through their previous heroes' journeys and figure out what were they struggling with? How did they find solutions? Right? So long story, I'm using WhisperFlow to play with my LLM. And I just put this in and this random block of related thoughts. And I'm thinking, I'm just going to dump it on the LLM. Because of my idea of this reverse hero's journey, it ran with it. It did a really great job making sense out of my, intuitive thoughts. And then I said, okay, what are thinking patterns? I came up with 8. And I said, are there more? Well, because I had given it all of my creative thought, it came up with 8 more that I would not have thought about. So it becomes this collaborative partner, but you're always the parent and the tool is always the child.
Yeah, that's good. On our previous recording, you and your 2 partners, you talked about the business DNA prompt. And that's kind of what I feel you're talking a little bit about. Yep. Can you kind of walk us through that a little bit more? And maybe how can somebody use it to simplify or even scale their business?
Yeah, so this is exactly it. We widened the types of people we can help. But the business DNA profile is basically a stack. Ours is about 200 pages deep now of all the information about your business, operational and strategically. So how do you make decisions? When do you say no or yes? Those are more strategic things. What are your set of values? What do you define as success? And then there's also the operational. How much money do you make or want to make? Which products do you want to launch? What's your team like? And when that all comes together, and it's not so easy to put together. And what we do is we coach together with an AI tool. So we put it all together, we prompt the AI tool correctly. And then this document sits in Claude's project. And again, it's completely accessible to everybody at every level of your business. We can cut it apart a little bit. So maybe your interns don't need to know how much money the business is making, stuff like that. But even the intern now can go to the AI tool and request information or write something that's perfectly aligned with the voice, the tone, the values of the founders. We just hired 5 new virtual assistants. I don't know if we did that already last time we talked to you, Africa and the Philippines. And they were tempted to ask us all kind of questions. And we're like, just go into your Claude tool and go ask it. And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot, right?
That's amazing. Then even from an onboarding perspective,
like once it's in there in your project, all you have to actually say is, please create me an onboarding process. And it takes about 4 minutes to do so.
Yeah. So you refer a lot to Claude and you also refer to the term project. So let's talk a little bit about both of those. Claude versus ChatGPT. Would you say that there's any difference? If you have the correct inputs, are you going to be able to get the same outputs?
Good question. So a lot of people think that ChatGPT can do the same thing as Claude Project by creating a custom GPT. But it doesn't. It doesn't have the same consistent output. In Claude, when you create a project, it's much more confined. You have much better constraints around how it responds. So you get a lot better consistency. Also, the way it responds. ChatGPT has a different tone. It's kind of a friendlier, softer, a little bit more woo-ish, almost mirror. And Claude is in our minds, more professional and more really for businesses.
Right. And so when you say project, I use ChatGPT and I do have several projects. So I create a new project, I give it instructions, and then I can put anything into that new project. So explain to the audience a little bit about what is a project and how do you make sure that you've got the right information or the right instructions in there to get the right outputs?
Work with us and we tell you, that it's a bit of an art, but so in Claude, you can just have a chat or you can open a folder in Claude. It's called a project. And then on the side, it's a knowledge base where you upload basically permanent information that you want the tool to use every single time it responds to you. Of course, even those are living documents. Your brand might evolve or you hire a new team member or you update an SOP. Then, of course, you update those as well because it always refers to the latest version that you uploaded. Once it's there, it's like your permanent, we call it like the business DNA. It's the brain, right? It's your second brain. And it produces material based on this content. It still pulls, of course, wisdom in from 5 billion other whatever pieces, but it refers primarily to the documents that you uploaded. So you get a very, very consistent output.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it too, because then I'm not telling it to do the same thing over and over again. You said something on our pre-call where a lot of these tools can be very masculine forward. And you had said that you try to put more of a feminine edge into the business. Bro culture is kind of going by the wayside. That sales approach just doesn't work for anybody anymore. And that people don't want to be sold to. They want to be brought in. They want to feel like you understand their business. How do you focus on making sure that you have a balance between a masculine and feminine energy in your business?
Great question. So these days we work with founders, mainly male, who actually have significant sized businesses, assets, usually a family of businesses. And so it's been really interesting to meet them where they're at, but still stay in my feminine power. It's been quite the exercise. And I was actually thinking recently that I don't know if 10 years ago I would have actually been able to do this. So I think it takes a lot of groundedness and a lot of just knowing oneself and not be swayed by having to appear a certain way or having to compete a certain way. Or it's I think mainly what I do is through my daily journaling in the morning, looking at, am I coming from fear? So therefore, I react to something and I might sway my email to meet that intimidating response I just got overnight, or back off and don't want to negotiate and go, yes, 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 we just want to work with you, right? Or am I really coming from my center where I have nothing to prove? It's okay if they don't like me, and it's lovely when they do. And what I actually find is that energy is exactly what they would like to sink into.
Yeah, no, that was a really great answer. I don't think I've heard that answer before. And I appreciate that. Like some mornings I'll get up as well and I'll say, like, how do I want my day to go today? And it's just sort of that grounding so that you can stay in that energy of who you are. And I think that's what is going to continue to grow your brand and your business, is by just being you.
Last week, I had a really cool interview with somebody. He was attracted to the soul part of it all because he's a very religious man. And he, like, as we were talking, sometimes you don't know who you have on the call, which is actually really lovely. And he's like, yeah, we got these 200 people over there and then over there. And I'm thinking, it's a huge business. And so there is this imposter syndrome that comes up, in the back of your mind, like, who am I? I'm this consultant. And yes, I've been very successful in my career, but I certainly don't have. He's like, yeah, we passed 100 million through our business last year. That's not what I've been doing in my career, right? And so it's really about, before I opened my mouth, I really checked. Was I going to now say something to please him and to accommodate him or to impress him? Or was I in any way moving away from who I was right here?
Yeah, and just to be present like that and to be able to know that, I think we conform to getting the deal. There's probably two things that were happening there for you. One is like, oh my God, will we be able to handle this business? And two, like you said, the imposter syndrome. And so many midlife women who are running businesses or who want to start a business, that is the first thing that they're going to bump into, is that, oh my God, I've never dealt with a client like this, or I've never spoken at an event like this, or I might be in a mastermind group and somebody's saying, does anybody want to take the role of blah, blah, blah? And damn well you can do it, but you're like, oh, I've never done it. And so therefore we shrink. And shrinking in midlife is even worse. We can lose our confidence. What was it in your business that made you feel like you ladies wanted to do a rebrand?
Well, it was more about the name because we'd already been doing it. But Soul Soothing was really more about the wellness of the entrepreneur. And then we went through this absolutely life-changing program and learned more about how to use AI to X your business instead, but you can 10X it without going crazy. So that's what we're teaching right now. And really went through our own kind of a 10X process where of course, it's really okay to, help women in particular to find work-life balance and to love their work. It's a wonderful mission. But somehow we grew into this is amazing material. And these really highly successful entrepreneurs will love what we have to offer. So we kind of just pulled ourselves up by our own bootstraps and said, okay, we have something really great to say and to offer. Together, we have something like 40 years of experience. Let's go do it. Let's lean in and actually not shriek away, and let's just do it. So all three of us are horsewomen. And couple of days ago, I had a particularly really inspiring sales call, and person was like, okay, let's get started yesterday. This is great. And I walk out and my husband is out with the dog in the yard and I go, talk me off the ledge. I am so scared. What am I doing? What am I saying yes to? Who am I? And my husband, also horseman, says, what would you do if you sat in the saddle? I would just stay really calm, really quiet, be the center, and my horse will, will fit my energy. He goes, that's it. That's what you do. And he went on. He was done with that conversation.
He's like, oh my God, how many times have I heard this before? But it's good. I appreciate the vulnerability that you're sharing for sure. So let's talk a little bit about a midlife woman running her own business. Maybe she's wearing all the hats, like for me, as I'm a prime example of that. What are the signs that her business is ready for systems and automation, for bringing in AI?
Good question, right? Ideally, really, and every business coach will say this, you should start a business with an exit strategy, right? But myself, I remember I was 40 when I had my first business after my divorce. And I remember that very first coach telling me this, and I'm thinking, I don't want to exit this business. I'm excited to have one. But when you think about exit, you do two things. You realize that you're not just taking a salary, but you're also ultimately exiting because your business has value. If you take these two into account, that you're not just working for income, but you're working for building value in your business, then immediately the business becomes a different entity from yourself, right? Because if you are the business, there's no value. So ideally, it would be great to start to put systems in right from day on, even little systems. Document everything. So when it comes time to hiring your first VA for 5 hours a week, now we have 5 working 40 hours a week, but you got to start somewhere, that they can already tap into your system. That's already one off. And then maybe it's 10 hours. What's another system that you can hand over? What's another workflow you never have to look at again? Because the stats on women, even though they make up over 50% of self-employed small business, micro businesses in the States, they only hold 6% of the income. So somewhere there, we're not systematizing quickly enough. We're not leaning into help quickly enough. We're not saying not what, but who. Right? So Dan Sullivan has this great book. It's like, okay, I want to do this. I don't need to learn how to do this. Who am I going to hire who will create an SOP and tell me how to do it? We don't think that. I mean, some women, of course, but there's a temptation, I think, for us to hold on to something for too long.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, there's a balance, right? For me, I have tried outsourcing really quickly. And I felt like I didn't really know how to coach or guide. I mean, this was before,
You got to know
AI
what you're
even.
doing first. Yes.
Exactly. I think get in your business and then, like you said, just get going on it right away. One thing you talked about was a VA. So that kind of seems like a common scenario, I guess, that you would see new clients so that they can do something quickly on their own, maybe even just start to test it a little bit, is to create some tasks for a VA. So your team put together a prompt that can be used for Midlife Women Entrepreneurs podcast. It's called the VA Delegator. It's a prompt that asked me a bunch of questions, which is that collecting of the data. And then it gave me some outputs and ideas. And so that I think was super nice. And I think it's a really great start to using AI to help problem solve, as you said earlier, problem solve some of the things and maybe even identify some of the roadblocks that I don't even think are roadblocks for me. So yeah,
That's a good, again, because it's pattern recognizing. It draws from way more patterns than what we in our limited self have experienced. So it can, even in contract writing, it will put paragraphs in that we never even thought of putting in.
Exactly. And I think that sometimes the hard part is doing that work and knowing where to kind of start with it all. And that's why I loved the VA Delegator that you created for my podcast listeners, because it's a simple prompt and so a bunch of questions that felt like they kind of gave me confidence and gave me a little bit of a win right away. And I think that everybody can start with that. So that'll be in the show notes. So, one thing that I think about too, where, you're talking about these big clients and how your business is shifting. Do you ever, and imposter syndrome, do you ever I think about a 50 plus woman, a midlife woman out there listening to this podcast right now, thinking, oh my God, I wouldn't even have the courage to, like, where do I even begin with AI? It's so overwhelming. I think I'm recognizing the courage that you have as a midlife woman, a midlife entrepreneur to continue growing and learning new technologies. Why is it important for us at any age to be constantly upskilling and growing?
It's a really good question. So I'm way beyond midlife, which is a really lovely space where anybody is aspiring to get to where I'm at. Go for it. It's great. It only gets better. So AI has so I'm born in 1963 in Germany. So 20 years after World War II, there was still a lot of wounds, but the economic miracle was already really happening. So for my lifetime, I've been taught and saw this illusion that everything's very stable and it moves forward at a linear pace. And if you just, invest your money at that percent of return, then you'll be fine, kind of a philosophy. But when we really look at the big picture of in the entire humanity, this is a really tiny glimpse, like a tiny little blip of perceived security, right? And then comes the internet, and then comes AI, and it's turned that perception, that illusion, completely around. There are no more job securities. We don't get 15% returns on stocks. The currency, is shaky. The world's power is shifting from good old Europe, where I'm still enjoying tremendous, standard of living, to China, India, Russia, right? So we have to deal with a lot of change as it's coming very fast. I mean, there's a new AI tool that's coming out every week. Things are just like, blah, right? So there are two things. You can either get unsettled by it, and a lot of people do, or you can learn to be more flexible and really live the Tao. The Tao is the ability to be like water and to flow like water. And I think this is probably the best currency that we could acquire right now, which is this ability to flow with change.
Yeah, that's great. And I think about that and then the comment around imposter syndrome. I wonder, when you're talking to a client, because now are you the sales, like they're talking to you
There
for
are two of us.
the two of you. So do you ever think like, oh, I'm going to say it because it's probably a bit of an elephant in the room and it's not how I think, but it's like, oh my gosh, she's a little bit kind of past her time. And what does she know about AI? I need to have somebody sitting in front of me who is, 25, just graduating MBA in engineering school, who's an engineer prompt in front of me. What would you say to that?
Well, that doesn't really work so much with us because I'm very, very clear that we're not agentifying the business, but that we're using this particular process to multiply the intelligence, right? So that kind of takes that wind out of the sails. And then, of course, I present that I have two other partners and two different generations, with one being 27. So she's really the AI person. So that's this piece. But that doesn't really eliminate the imposter syndrome. I'm too old. I'm too fat. I'm too, ugly. And oh my God. And this light here in my studio is shining in the wrong way. I mean, we say this stuff to ourselves. It's just horrible at bombarding ourselves with negative talk, right? Thank goodness I've done enough personal work that I notice that it's just negative talk. It's not me. It's not who I am. And then I've learned to turn it around and realize that, and this is one of the lovely things of having been on the planet for a while, is that it's my energy that sells. It's the safety that I can create in the call. It's this ability to not shrink, not shriek, not change, and to be that safe, almost like the lighthouse, that either they come towards me or they don't, but I'm not changing. And somehow, call after call, some are not, not the appropriate people. Like last week, I was talking to somebody who says he hates people and he wants to like AIify his entire business. And I just said, look, I love listening to you, but we're not the right folks. That's okay. But in general, there is a dropping of defenses and a more vulnerable show of emotions. And what I notice is no matter how high you climb this ladder, these people have the same imposter syndromes, the same
Yeah.
fear, the same, I hope she doesn't notice who I really am, or she won't like
Yeah.
me syndrome. Right. So
Yeah.
I think in many ways, my age is actually really, really helping, because this is one of those really great, somebody like 20 years ago said, oh, once you're past 40, you care a lot less.
Using that life experience, as you said, to really kind of help you push forward, because it doesn't matter what age, we've all dealt with our own inner critic at some point, and we can either choose to carry it forward, or we can finally say, no, you're going to rest, kind of thing.
So it's a cool horse story that I saw a couple decades ago. There was, in horses, when somebody, a trainer comes to your barn, it's called a clinic. I don't know why it's called that. So a clinician was there. And he said, okay, I'm going to be really, really unpopular, but you women, you do this. You're actually really, really nice. From a scale to 1 to 10, you either don't apply enough pressure on your horse and, being really nice and kissy and huggy and all of that, or you get sick and tired of the horse stepping on your toes and sitting on your lap, and then you get aggressive and you push him away. I didn't like what he was saying, but then I thought, there's a grain of truth in this, where for us women to be assertive, that sweet center isn't so easy for some of us. We want to be nice. We want to be liked. We don't want to be cast out. We don't, we depend on a herd. And then if we get trampled on, we get aggressive. So that's kind of stayed with me and helped me tremendously train over. I gentled and tamed over 100 wild horses in California.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. You're coming? Great. Back up. You want to come? Back up. And I stayed emotionally the same calm self. That's really difficult, because you get really afraid when a big animal comes at you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And the horses melt into that energy.
That's interesting. And I have had a couple of people on the podcast as well that have talked about horses and using it in their practice, their coaching practices and stuff. So there's a lot to be learned there for sure. There's a thing that I believe that this Midlife Women Entrepreneur podcast is a room for women to borrow beliefs. And so if there was one belief that they could borrow from you, what would that belief be?
I always live by this simple analogy of a candle. And when you look at a candle, there's this rim on the outside. That to me is childhood wounds that created protection. And the flame inside of that candle is very little, right? It can't see out and it can't shine, you can't see much. But as you do your inner work and you melt the wax, the borders, you shine brighter and the wax becomes softer and becomes the fuel for your flame. And so I always thought of the wick as being the masculine and the flame being the feminine, and ultimately united together, which is all nice and good. But what I recently thought, it's not about perfection and always, living life as this flame. It's the returning and the remembering that that's what we are. So really, if I could say something to everybody, is go let your light shine brighter, let your wounds fuel the light. And then when you forget and the wax gets hard again, it's okay too. You can always return and reignite. And ultimately, it seems to stick a little better and a little longer, and it stays a little longer at that place. And so it's not about perfection, but it's about returning.
That's a great metaphor. I could visualize the wax. Christiane, you have been wonderful. Thank you. I'm so glad we did a little updated recording so that you could share the new updates around your business. I think that you're giving a lot of inspiration. In the show notes, I'll put the BA Delegator prompt that you have generously shared. And where do people find you?
Just hop over to SoulXAI, and we have a sandbox session that you can book for free and come, and I can show how Claude works, or my partner Cerise will be happy to actually show you how this looks in reality. And we'd love to just chat, and we'd love a few more women, very courageous, bold women that are ready to take on the world and make a difference.
Sounds awesome. And so Soul Time is SoulXAI.biz. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for showing up today. I appreciate your wisdoms and your time. And I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, and good luck with your community. It sounds like it's a blessing to the women who are part of it. Thank
Hey,
you.
it's Lynette. Thanks for listening today. Please like and subscribe. And if there's somebody out there that you think could benefit from the episode, give it a share. Midlife is your time, so go get it.